Come and pull up a chair and let's have a chat. Forget the world outside and where we're at. Just the warmth of the wood and the morning light, keeping the shadows of the day out of sight. At corner coffee with cricket, watching the slow-moving moments pass. With a melody drifting on the steam of the brew, finding a stillness that feels brand new.
I want you to picture your living space right now. Like, specifically your backlog of unfinished projects.
Oh, we all have one.
Right. You definitely know the ones I mean. It's that stack of half-read books on the nightstand that you swear you're going to get back to.
Or that one coding side project just sitting in a desktop folder completely untouched since, like, last November.
Exactly. Or maybe it's the guest room that is entirely painted, except for that one elusive corner behind the door.
Yep, the classic blind spot.
Have you ever stood in front of that physical manifestation of your own good intentions and just asked yourself, how did I get so many?
I mean, it's a nearly universal experience, isn't it, to accumulate that pile?
It really is.
It always starts as this genuine spark of inspiration or ambition, but somehow, almost invisibly, it morphs into a monument to our own distractedness or just a lack of time.
Which, makes you feel a little guilty every time you look at it.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, today we're taking a deep dive into that exact phenomenon, but we're looking at it through a highly specific lens.
And it's a really fascinating one.
It is. Our source material today is an entry literally titled, How Did I Get So Many? It's from a project called Cricket's Wool Diary, which is by a maker named Cricket Fox over at Corner Coffee with Cricket.
Right.
And our mission today is to explore how a simple, everyday hobby can spiral into a room-consuming hoard. And, more importantly, how that very same overwhelming stash actually serves as a profoundly calibrated tool for navigating grief, illness, and survival.
Yeah, the source material is so compelling because it takes something society usually dismisses as just a quirky, borderline hoarder trait.
Having too much craft stuff.
Exactly, having way too much craft stuff.
Yeah.
And it completely recontextualizes the psychology behind it.
Which is why I love the backdrop you've set up today.
Yeah, I see it just transitioned to fit the mood.
For those of you listening, we're currently looking at a warmly lit room overflowing with the most vibrant, colorful skeins of yarn, alongside some neatly stacked, very well-loved journals.
It paints a very cozy picture, I think.
It does. Though I have to say, the sheer volume of that yarn is staggering when you actually dig into the details of Cricket's stash.
It really is an avalanche.
An avalanche is the perfect word.
Right.
And it really kicked into high gear with a birthday gift.
Right, from her stepson.
Yeah, her stepson gave her a gift card, and as she puts it, she just went crazy in the yarn aisle.
I mean, who wouldn't?
Totally justified.
Mm-hmm.
But a few weeks later, she decided to actually sit down and sort out all the new yarn she bought, alongside all the projects she already had in progress.
And this is where the scale of it really hits you.
Exactly. When she laid everything out, it literally covered a queen-size bed.
Wow. I mean, just to put that in perspective, a queen-size bed offers about 33 square feet of surface area.
That is a massive amount of space.
It is. To bury that entirely in yarn implies a massive accumulation of simultaneous distinct projects. It's really a striking visual representation of mental load taking up physical space in a home.
She does offer some very practical, relatable reasons for this accumulation, though.
Shreya?
First, she admits she simply gets bored and wants to start something fresh.
Fair enough.
Second, the logistics of travel come into play. If you're making a massive Afghan, you can't exactly stuff it in a standard tote bag and take it on the bus.
Definitely not.
And third, she mentions the weather, which makes a lot of sense.
Oh, the weather is a huge factor for crafters.
Right, because when the temperature hits over 80 degrees, dragging heavy wool blankets across your lap just becomes miserable.
Yeah, you'd overheat instantly.
So she swaps to making small individual squares or strips that she can stitch together later when it's cooler.
That's smart.
Okay, let's unpack this, because reading that instantly made me think of having like 50 browser tabs open on a computer.
Oh, that is a very apt comparison for how working memory and intention function.
Right. Every single open tab, or in Cricket's case, every unfinished project is an intention. It's a spark of interest that was initiated but then paused because the system requirements suddenly changed.
Exactly. The weather got too hot or the travel logistics shifted.
Yeah. Or the brain just needed a different kind of stimulation, Viewing it that way, it's not a failure to finish. It's a perfectly logical, organic response to a changing physical environment.
What's fascinating here is how clearly this illustrates the way a simple leisure activity transitions into a physical map of a person's shifting daily life.
The physical map, yeah.
Because we tend to think of art or crafting as an activity that happens in a vacuum, right? Like it's completely removed from the demands of the world.
Yeah, just zoning out in a chair somewhere.
Exactly. But Cricket's explanation proves that the physical environment is deeply intertwined with her creative output. The literal temperature of the room actively edits her workflow.
It dictates the size and the portability of what she can make.
Yes, it dictates the scope of the art she is capable of producing in that specific moment.
That makes the visual of the queen-size bed a bit less chaotic and a bit more like a geographical map of her year.
That's a great way to look at it.
But while a short attention span or a hot summer day explains a portion of those projects, the source material reveals a much heavier, far more profound driver behind this constant initiation of new tasks.
Yeah, the narrative takes a very sharp emotional turn here.
It does.
The sheer volume of yarn is not just a byproduct of shifting weather or boredom, it functions as a literal lifeline.
The diary reveals that over the last 4 years, Cricket has fought cancer on 2 entirely different occasions.
Wow.
Yeah. She has endured both chemotherapy and immunotherapy.
That is an incredibly brutal regimen.
It really is. But it is important to celebrate the fact that she notes she is currently cancer-free.
Oh, absolutely. A massive medical victory.
Huge.
But anyone familiar with those treatments knows they come with an unimaginable physical and psychological toll.
The fatigue alone.
The fatigue, the brain fog, the constant underlying hum of anxiety about the future. It is an exhausting baseline to live with.
And on top of those brutal, prolonged medical battles, she suffered a devastating personal loss. In December of 2024, Cricket lost her husband, Phil.
That's just so much to carry.
It is. She describes him as wonderful and incredibly supportive of her obsession with making things. She even notes he had a great eye for helping her pick out color palettes and patterns.
Which is so sweet.
It really is. And in the midst of this rolling trauma, the dual cancer battles, the grueling treatments, the profound grief of losing her life, Cricket explicitly states that crafting is what helped her focus.
Yes.
It's the tool she used to get through what she calls the next 5 minutes.
That specific phrasing, right there, getting through the next 5 minutes, is vital to understanding her psychological state.
How so?
Well, when you are standing in the wreckage of a cancer diagnosis or the immediate aftermath of losing a spouse, looking at the rest of your life is paralyzing.
Oh, it's too much.
Looking ahead to the next morning is too vast a landscape of pain to process. The human brain just cannot compute that level of sustained grief without shutting down. But 5 minutes. You can survive 5 minutes. It reduces the horizon of survival to a manageable microdose.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the traditional view of a hobby like knitting or crocheting is that it's a way to zone out.
Yeah, passive relaxation.
Right. You picture someone relaxing by a fire, letting their mind wander. But what Cricket is describing isn't passive relaxation at all. It sounds like an active, desperate coping mechanism.
It absolutely is.
I have to wonder if the sheer volume of projects covering her bed is actually a physical record of every 5-minute window where she had to actively fight to keep her head above water.
It acts as exactly that kind of record. And she reveals a brilliant, highly sophisticated strategy for navigating those micro-horizons.
Oh, her categorization strategy.
Yes. She categorizes her work based on her immediate, fluctuating psychological needs.
Which requires so much self-awareness.
Completely. For instance, she has what she calls mindless projects.
Oh.
These rely on repetitive muscle memory tasks. She deploys these when her brain is completely fried from treatment or grief, and she just needs a safe, rhythmic holding pattern.
Just keeping her hands moving.
Exactly. But on the flip side, she intentionally initiates focus-heavy projects.
And these are the complex ones, right?
Right. These are patterns requiring strict counting, complex color work, or structural changes. And she uses these to intentionally challenge her thinking.
She is deliberately using the complexity of the math, to override the panic in her brain.
Precisely. From a cognitive perspective, human working memory has a strictly limited capacity. It's like a bucket that can only hold so much water at one time.
Okay, I like that analogy.
So if you force your brain to rigorously count stitches, track complex geometric patterns, and manage yarn tension, you are filling that bucket to the brim with mathematics and textiles.
So there's no room for anything else.
Exactly. You are leaving absolutely no room in your working memory for physical pain or emotional distress to spiral. The pattern acts as a heavy anchor. It pulls her away from the void and drags her, stitch by meticulous stitch, through that next 5 minutes.
Self-medicating with geometry. That is just, it requires an incredible level of self-awareness.
It is a profound level of self-regulation, and it's really worth asking you, the listener, to evaluate your own tool set here.
Yeah, that's a good point.
When you are hit with a wave of stress, grief, or physical exhaustion, do you possess scalable tools like Cricut does?
Do you have a mindless tool and a focus-heavy tool?
Right. Do you have a mindless tool for when you are overwhelmed and a separate focus-heavy tool for when you need to actively anchor your spiraling thoughts? Recognizing which tool your brain needs at any given second is a rare skill.
It really is. But the danger of having that many emotionally weighted projects, especially ones tethered to such intense periods of trauma, is that it could easily lead to total paralysis.
Oh, for sure.
Facing a queen-size bed covered in the physical manifestations of your own survival battles could make you freeze.
Most people would.
But Cricut doesn't freeze. She developed this highly eccentric operating system to keep the chaos moving forward.
Yeah, what looks like an out-of-control horde on that bed is actually governed by a strict set of internal rules. She basically built a dashboard for her own survival.
Let's look at the actual rules she relies on, because they are fascinating.
They really are.
First, she keeps a journal to explicitly track her progress, and she forces herself to change projects every few days.
To keep things fresh.
Right. But the standout rule is something we can call the PV rule.
Ah, yes.
She often watches television shows while she works, and if she watches more than one episode of a single show, she forces herself to put down whatever she is making and switch to a completely different project.
It's a very strict boundary.
It is. And I actually have to push back on this a bit.
Okay, go ahead.
If you're using a complex pattern to anchor yourself, and you're finally in the zone, wouldn't forcing yourself to stop just because the TV credits roll actually induce more anxiety by breaking that flow? It feels counterintuitive.
I see why you'd think that. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, we have to view her system not as a productivity hack, but as a triage system in an emergency room.
A triage system. Okay.
When you are surviving profound grief and illness, hyperfocus can actually become dangerous.
Because you lose track of your body.
Exactly. If you stay locked into a repetitive physical or mental task for too long without checking in on your body, you risk a sudden crash. That could be a physical repetitive strain or a delayed emotional overwhelming wave.
Ah, so the TV show is essentially a timer, like the Pomodoro technique, but organically measured by television narrative arcs.
Yes. The TV rule provides a built-in, story-driven boundary. It forces her to pause, unclench her hands, take a breath, and evaluate her vitals.
She has to stop and assess what she needs next.
Right. She has to actively decide, do I still need a focus-heavy project, or has my mental state shifted enough to switch to a mindless one?
Which means she is constantly monitoring her own status and deploying the exact right tool to keep herself stable.
Precisely.
But if she's regulating her mental vitals with the TV, how is her body holding up to that kind of marathon crafting?
That is a very real concern.
Which brings us to her muscle rule.
Yes.
She actively and intentionally switches back and forth between knitting and crocheting.
Which use very different motions.
Right. By actively swapping the needles for a hook, she's changing the muscle groups in her hands and arms, preventing repetitive strain injuries during these endless coping sessions.
She engineered a triage system that allows her to continually produce and self-soothe without physically destroying her hands or mentally burning out in the process.
It's so balanced.
It is. She is balancing the physical, the mental, and the emotional loads simultaneously, ensuring she always has the capacity to keep going.
And this system isn't solely about managing her own internal state either.
No, it extends outward.
Yeah, as the source material delves into the specific pieces sitting on that bed, it becomes clear that these projects are deeply connected to the people around her.
They really are.
They function as active instruments for preserving memories and communicating with the outside world.
The yarn transcends being just a hobby medium here. In the wake of profound loss, it becomes a distinct language.
The specific projects mentioned in her diary carry so much weight.
Let's talk about them.
First, there's a miter square blanket designed for their queen-size bed. Phil actually helped her calculate the math for this blanket.
The 33 stitches.
Yes, determining the pattern required exactly 33 stitches per square. And Cricket ingeniously figured out a way to join these blocks together without having to tuck in and sew all the loose ends.
Which is brilliant.
Any crafter listening knows that avoiding sewing in ends is a massive time saver.
Oh, nobody likes sewing in ends.
Nobody. But in this context, it feels like something more. If you're actively undergoing chemotherapy, your physical energy is a finite, precious resource.
Yes, very finite.
Finding a way to bypass the tedious, exhausting process of sewing ends isn't just a clever hack. It is a vital energy conservation tactic.
It allows her to preserve her limited physical strength for the actual making of the squares, for the part of the process that keeps her anchored to Phil's math.
And that connection to Phil continues with 2 secret projects that he helped her design before he passed.
This part really got me.
Me too. She notes that they are totally completed, packed up, and ready to ship to their recipients. The people receiving them have absolutely no idea they are coming.
Imagine opening that package. It is a profound gift.
Truly.
You are receiving a physical artifact designed by someone who is gone, carried forward, and manifested by the person who loved them most. It is a tangible piece of legacy arriving in the mail.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
But she doesn't just craft to preserve the past. She uses her skills to actively support people in the present, too.
Her speed projects.
Exactly. She knows that she will drop everything, completely abandoning her carefully calibrated triage system to do speed projects. She makes these specifically to ship to mates who she can see are struggling and in need of support.
It's incredibly selfless.
It makes you wonder, though, why someone carrying the weight of dual cancer battles and the loss of a spouse would drop everything to take on someone else's burden.
Well, when you are subjected to severe illness and sudden bereavement, your sense of control is entirely stripped away. You are at the mercy of biology and fate.
You feel powerless.
Exactly. So by dropping everything to materialize comfort for a friend, she reclaims her agency.
Oh, that makes sense.
She cannot cure her own grief or magically erase her friend's struggle, but she can rapidly weave a physical manifestation of love and physically place it in their hands. It is a powerful assertion that she still has the capacity to care for others.
That's incredibly empowering. And the diary also points toward the future.
It does.
She's currently working on a knitting pattern called Hopscotch out of scrap colors, designated for the daughter of her favorite player, Alex Neil Bullen.
That's a fun one.
Yeah. She even bought Mardi Gras colors for a future blanket, though she notes she has packed that specific yarn away for now.
Saving it for later.
Right. And looking toward the future leads to her ultimate goal for the year 2026. Her challenge is to actually cross items off this massive monster list without starting anything new.
That is a highly ambitious goal, considering how heavily she relies on the initiation of new projects to manage her shifted mental state.
It's going to be tough.
Closing the loop on that many items will require a fundamental shift in how she interacts with her stash.
It will. But she does give herself one massive, heartbreaking exception to that 2026 rule.
The projects for Phil.
Yes. She notes that she has a couple of special projects that she works on specifically when she is missing Phil.
Yeah.
So what does this all mean? Because she explicitly writes that these special Phil-related projects might take a little longer to get done, but that's okay.
It changes the perspective entirely.
It really does. Are these unfinished projects actually ongoing, unfinished conversations with her late husband? Are they physical manifestations of unexpressed love where finishing the blanket would feel like ending the conversation?
This raises an important question about the true social and emotional currency of the stash itself.
How so?
We started this deep dive looking at a queen-sized bed covered in what society would traditionally view as a burden, a hoarding of unfinished tasks and broken intentions.
Just a messy pile of yarn.
Exactly. But when you look closely at the 33-stitch math Phil calculated, the secret gifts he helped design, the speed projects rushed out to struggling friends, you realize the yarn isn't a burden at all.
It's something else entirely.
It is a repository. It is a physical bank of memory, of sustained love, and of future connections waiting to be made.
And by intentionally keeping those specific projects unfinished, the ones she reaches for when she misses him, she's keeping the connection active.
Yes. By allowing those projects to linger, by letting them take a little longer, she prolongs the tactile process of feeling close to him.
Because she's physically interacting with his designs.
She is holding his math in her hands. It proves that in this specific, beautiful context, completion is not the goal. The process itself is the entire point.
The act of doing it.
The act of stitching the blanket is what provides the comfort, not having a finished blanket folded in a closet.
That reframes the entire concept of an unfinished project. It's not a failure to cross the finish line, it's a profound desire to stay on the track.
Perfectly said.
Which brings our journey through Cricket's diary to a close. We started with a very relatable, mildly amusing image of a maker going rogue in the yarn aisle with a birthday gift card.
Resulting in a queen-size bed buried in wool.
Right. But thanks to Cricket's incredible openness, what we actually uncovered was a masterclass on the resilience of the human spirit.
It truly is a masterclass. It's a testament to surviving cancer, to carrying the staggering weight of grieving a spouse, and to possessing the sheer ingenuity to build a physical, tactile triage system for coping with life's hardest moments.
You're just taking it 5 minutes at a time.
Exactly, 5 minutes at a time.
It really makes you look at your own hobbies and the things you collect to comfort yourself in an entirely different light.
It does, and it leaves me with a thought that I want to pass directly to you, the listener, to mull over long after this discussion ends.
Let's hear it.
If we view Cricket's massive stash not as a failure of productivity, but as a brilliant physical archive of her survival, what about you?
Well, that's a good question.
If an archaeologist were to dig up your stash of unfinished business, your half-written emails, your abandoned hobbies, your saved links, or the unpainted corners of your rooms, what story of self-soothing, of hope, or of sheer survival would it tell about you?
What is your backlog actually trying to say about what you needed in those moments when the world felt too heavy?
Exactly.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. I hope the next time you look at your own monster lists of unfinished tasks, you grant yourself a little more grace, a little more understanding.
We all need a bit more of that.
We really do.
Yeah.
Maybe you'll realize that, exactly like Cricket, you are just finding a way to get through the next 5 minutes. Until next time, keep exploring, and maybe finally tackle that one corner behind the guest room door.
Or don't.
Or don't. Maybe it's serving its purpose perfectly, exactly the way it is.